The studio lights burned bright, casting an almost surreal glow over the polished table and the panelists seated around it. The tension in the air was thick enough to slice with a knife. The cameras were rolling, and the audience was locked in, waiting for the next exchange. Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana sat straight-backed in his chair, the faintest smile at the corner of his lips. He had been invited to The View to talk about rural America, political divides, and the state of the nation. But from the moment the discussion began, it was clear that this was not going to be a gentle conversation. Whoopi Goldberg leaned forward, her eyes sharp, her tone edged with impatience. "You know, Senator," she began, "people like you love to lecture the rest of America about values and tradition, but maybe you should just go back to the Bayou where you came from and keep your opinions there." The studio audience gasped. A few chuckled nervously. Others sat frozen, sensing that the moment had crossed an invisible line. Kennedy didn't flinch. He didn't meet fire with fire. Instead, he took a slow breath, as if letting the words settle before deciding what to do with them. His calm presence seemed to slow the very rhythm of the room. "Ma'am," he said softly, his Louisiana drawl rolling like warm molasses, "I am from the Bayou.
Déteste my home.
It's where I learned to work hard, respect my neighbors, and treat people the way I'd like to be treated."
My mama used to say, "Don't let anyone else's rudeness make you forget your money."
The audience stirred. His voice carried not the bite of a counterattack, but the warmth of someone who had nothing to prove. "You can tell me to go back all you want," Kennedy continued, his gaze steady, "but I'll tell you what you'll find when you get there. You'll find people who will give you their last cup of sugar if you need it. Folks who'll pull your car out of the mud at 2 a.m. without asking for a dime. People who work sunup to sundown just to make sure their families are fed. And maybe, just maybe, this country could use a little more of that spirit right now." A hush fell over the room. Even the panelists who had been nodding along to Whoopi's jab sat still, absorbing his words. Whoopi blinked, taken aback. It wasn't the rebuttal she expected. She'd expected defensiveness, maybe outrage. But instead, Kennedy had turned her insult into a love letter, to his roots, his people, and his values. The conversation shifted. Kennedy began sharing stories from his youth, about learning to fish with his father, about neighbors coming together after hurricanes, about Sunday dinners that stretched into the evening because no one wanted to leave. His words painted pictures in the minds of everyone listening, a reminder that America was more than just headlines and partisan talking points. At one point, he looked right into the camera. "You see, I don't think where you're from should ever be used as an insult. Where you're from is where your story begins. And stories, well, they can change hearts if we let them." By the time the segment ended, the tension had melted. The audience erupted in applause, not polite clapping, but the kind that comes when something true and rare has been said. Even Whoopi, to her credit, gave a small nod. After the show, people flooded social media. Clips of Kennedy's response went viral. Viewers who had never paid attention to him before found themselves replaying his words. Many said they were reminded of their own hometowns, their own families, and the quiet dignity of everyday life. One comment stood out among thousands. "In a world full of shouting, sometimes the calm voice speaks the loudest." And maybe that was the real lesson of the day. It wasn't about winning an argument or scoring political points. It was about showing that you can stand your ground without losing your grace. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in the face of disrespect is to remind people of what respect really looks like. When Senator Kennedy walked out of that studio, he didn't look triumphant, he looked content. Because he knew that somewhere, someone had heard more than just his words. They'd heard his heart. I can also rewrite this with more dialogue, layered tension, and emotional beats so it fully fills a 15-minute YouTube narrative flow with rises and pauses in the story. That would make it even more gripping for retention.